Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's an RPG First Look. As was pointed out in chat before we got started, we've been doing so many of these lately, and it's really cool. It's really fun. I've been super happy to have the opportunity to look at so many games, and I think it's a combination of basically the post-Gen Con glut, right? There are always new games to look at right after Gen Con. So basically everything from August right through to the end of the year. And then also a lot of people put out games to try to grab onto that kind of Christmas rush. So there's been a lot of new stuff. But Five Torches Deep, unlike a lot of the first looks we've been doing in the last little while, it's not brand new, but it's new to me. And I agreed when the publisher came to ask me if I want to do a first look. I agreed because this combines two things. This game, Five Torches Deep, combines two things that I am particularly interested. 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, right, which I obviously play a lot of, and the OSR. So before we get into it, the usual business, if you want to take a look at Five Torches Deep yourself, if you're watching this on Twitch, there is a command, ! 5 torches, all one word. That'll get you a link. You can go check it out. I believe the game is available as a PDF. I think it's available as a hard and soft cover, or maybe just a soft cover, but go check it out. It's over on Drive-Thru. There's that link there. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll make sure that link makes its way into the description of the video. So Five Torches Deep is a streamlined adventure game. I'm reading just from their information here. A streamlined adventure game combining the best mechanics and principles of 5e, the OSR, and modern game design. So I guess that's why it's called Five Torches Deep, because there's that like 5e, but it also implies you've expended 5 torches making your way down into the dungeon. The OSR as a thing, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are watching this who are like, well, I'm familiar with 5e, right? That means 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But what is the OSR? I neither have the time nor the skill to explain the OSR in a way that is going to be acceptable to everyone. It's a term that gets used in a lot of different ways to describe a lot of different game products. And as a result, the terminology is a bit fuzzy, but generally, OSR stands for Old School Renaissance or Old School Revival. It looks at older versions of Dungeons and Dragons, predominantly, though there are some OSR movements around games like Warhammer. You'll see the term applied elsewhere, but generally speaking, it looks back at basic D&D, AD&D, right? Early editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and applies those design principles to new games. Now, sometimes it's just a reskin or a mild adjustment to some rules, right? You'll see versions of, like, edited versions of basic Dungeons and Dragons. There are several options under various names that basically just take that design and do things like flip the to-hit number so it's not THAC0 anymore, make armor class ascending, minor adjustments to sort of modernize basic D&D. That's a fairly standard thing, but there are more complex games. If you have been watching the content that I've been creating, you might have seen our first look at Stars Without Number. I consider Stars Without Number to be an OSR game, though I'm not sure that its designer, Kevin Crawford, necessarily thinks that himself. It's a marketing term, it's a game design term, but generally what it means is taking old game design ideas and applying them to a modern play environment. I would put that as the broadest term for the OSR in general. But it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. There are a lot of blogs about it. It's a whole school of game design, and I would suggest you go and check into that if you're interested. Five Torches Deep wants to, and we'll see how successful it is at doing this, Five Torches Deep wants to marry some of those concepts from the OSR to modern Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm super curious to see if that is something that is possible, something that is capable of being done. Now, I've played a lot of 5e. I've played a lot of basic D&D. I'm pretty well versed in both things. I have some ideas about the kinds of things that make OSR gameplay feel old school, but I'm not gonna put too much of my own bias up front. We can kind of talk about as we go through maybe what I expected versus what I got, and we'll look at the various tools about how Five Torches Deep does that. So I'm gonna get out of the way. Let me move so you can actually see the game. There it is. So this is the cover of Five Torches Deep. I'm looking at the PDF version that is formatted for the screen, or for, I guess, a horizontal tablet. And this is the cover. So here's our adventuring party. I assume that it's like a halfling, a dwarf, a human, and maybe that's an orc. I mean, got green skin. It looks like an orc to me. They are, it's interesting, the choice for the art, because they're in a very isolated environment. You would normally expect to see a cover like this, full of monsters, right? People casting spells, getting in battles, those kinds of things. But this is an isolated environment. And I think that's interesting. I think portraying like an empty room, but they seem to be like urgently moving from one place to another, indicates some action. And I think, maybe there's some creepy guys in the background that they are on their way away from. Yeah, if you take a look up here. Yeah, so part of for me, what Dungeons and Dragons and any kind of like fantasy adventure game, what it really does when you look at it from an OSR perspective is it cares mechanically about time passing and about exploration within a constrained environment. It cares a lot about dungeon delving. And I'm curious because 5e excised basically the entirety of that. Like any rules that would normally be there for measuring time outside of combat, exploration time, things like light and inventory, those things for the most part seem to have been either deeply simplified or cut completely. I was talking about this, I think, when we were doing one of the prep sessions for Mad Mage, about how we really don't do random wandering monster tables, even in mega dungeons like Mad Mage, like we used to. And that kind of sentiment, that's very OSR, right? Which is why I think a lot of OSR publications can sound a little bit like, well, in my day, you had to roll an initiative score at the beginning of combat, and it changed every round, you see, and if you used a spear, you were... So there is some of that kind of Grandpa Simpsoning that goes on in OSR game design, this idea for some designers that what is old is good and what is new is bad. But I was interested when Five Torches Deep got described to me for the first time, that idea of like marrying it to modern game design and putting it together with D&D. So I'm curious about what that looks like. So I guess all I have to do to answer my curiosities is to dive in. So let's take a look. So Five Torches Deep, it looks like, okay, so this is our table of contents. It looks like it's about 50 pages. I'm curious to see if we need a player's handbook or a monster manual or a dungeon master's guide to go along with this, or if it's a standalone game. I'm not sure whether, like, 50 pages isn't a lot, but the original basic D&D wasn't much longer. So I guess we'll see. There's some bits at the beginning about kind of what the OSR is to this game, the core mechanics and stuff, and we'll see if we're gonna need anything else. I recognize a couple of names from the text here. You might recognize Eric Vogaris, perhaps. Huh? Jean Adessir, another one I've seen there. Jean, I've actually never heard your name pronounced out loud. I'm very sorry, but I recognize it. And so the game is primarily by Ben and Jessica Dutter, with art by Per Fulmer and Sebastian Rodriguez. Let's dig in. I'm not gonna go too deep into like looking at this as a. I mean, we'll get it short. I don't need to waste too much time on the table of contents. So here we go. What is this? Five Torches Deep strips 5e to its skeleton and fleshes it out with OSR elements. The goal is to provide an old school experience to those familiar with 5e. Oh, there you go. Self-contained and playable as is, assuming familiarity with fantasy RPGs. Okay, so this wouldn't be your first, necessarily like your first gameplay. This might not be the first game you experience, because the game assumes and expects that you have played some fantasy RPGs before, that it is something that you have experience with. This is not a beginner product. And it's nice that it lays that out at the beginning, right? You probably want to have played some kind of fantasy RPG before, because this is going to kind of lean you into a lot of stuff. So it's meant to ease the introduction of OSR mechanics and principles to those familiar with 5e. The classes and monsters are largely compatible with 5e and can be plugged in and out as you see fit. The more FTD you add, the more OSR it feels. Interesting. Okay, so it's both its own thing, its own standalone thing, but it's also modular in the sense that I guess you can take bits and pieces and you can put them into your 5e game to make your game slightly more or a lot more OSR. This kind of reminds me how, for those of you who are familiar with Tomb of Annihilation, at the beginning of Tomb, there is an optional rule that says you can make it so that your death saves are only successful on a 15 or higher, and you get, 10% more experience? Knobs, buttons, sliders, ways to adjust the core thing of D&D. I will go ahead before we even get into this, and I will say, I wish more of this stuff, this kind of thing, was in the Dungeon Master's Guide. That's what I want the DMG to be. Alternate armor class, more OSR tools, narrative combat, like rules, rather than just like, here's 50 pages of how to make a fantasy kingdom. Less world building, more stuff like this, Dungeon Master's Guide. Come on. So this seems cool. This is a way to bring in some of that stuff, either wholesale or in bits and pieces, according to what your group wants. And I think as a toolkit, that's a really great way of doing it. Rather than saying you have to adopt everything, this is bits and pieces that you can bring in. So the core mechanics of this are based on 5e. There are 4 classes, 4 races. There are race and class restrictions. It has D&D's stats, ascending AC, rolled abilities and HP. That's interesting. Reduced and simplified skills, flattened magic system, spells have mishaps, semi-compatible with both 5e and BX math. So that's interesting. Semi-compatible. I'm curious to see what that means. Slower and weaker rest and healing. Equipment can be broken. Ability scores determine limits, retainers, morale, and reactions. Yeah. So that makes sense. These are all bits and pieces of the OSR that are being grabbed and repurposed for this book. So BX, whenever you see that in an OSR term, it's the basic or expert rules, which are that's basic D&D. Same thing. That's what the B in BX stands for. It's one good book and one not as good book. So the principles and mechanics below are OSR. Okay, so danger is real. The world is legitimately dangerous. PC death is always around the corner, and even a small mistake can lead to disaster. Okay, this is the game telling us what the game is about, and then I guess we're going to see mechanically how it's about that. So the game relies on a certain amount of player ingenuity, cleverness, and cunning. You shouldn't brute force your way through every obstacle because you have a high skill modifier. The game demands a thoughtful approach that minimizes the need to roll. Interesting. So in the OSR, often you don't have things like perception checks. They're just not in the game. You describe what your character is looking at or touching or listening to, and then the GM will tell you what you see, hear, and feel so that you can then decide. So you might say, I search the room for secret doors, and the GM will say, how? What do you do? And then you say, okay, I go around looking at the walls for any change in color or texture. I'm touching the wall, looking for any panels that might sink in, and I'm listening to hear airflow that might change. And the GM might say, okay, you find a switch hidden behind a painting on the wall. What do you do? Right? And it's less like roll, and then the GM tells you what your character did. It's more you describe what you're doing and then the circumstances. It's fictionally much stronger than 5e can be in the sense that you always know what you're doing, but it does tend to kind of bog down when you develop a trap finding protocol. You go through similar steps every time you enter a room. So magic is haphazard. We talked about that a little bit. And then a significant portion of the game and its rules focus on traveling through predatory wilderness, managing rations, light, and rest. So that's interesting too. That's something that we'll take a look at. So in this game, what's different from 5e, the default DC is 11. Doesn't change much. The GM is encouraged to minimize the need to roll checks at all, given the PC's approach. So it's a say yes, don't roll the dice. Like it's a fictional positioning thing, first and foremost. Okay. Ability scores are much lower than in 5e. Proficiency bonuses scale the same, but don't apply in the same amount of places. HP is similar, but damage is higher. Rest and healing are more demanding. Okay. Apparently there are no dump stats, which is, it's a bold claim because that means that mechanically all the stats have to come up pretty much equivalently. Then it's a number of times. Yeah. Interesting. These are bold claims, and I'm curious to see what that means. So, and then new mechanics, new things to reinforce the tropes of old school games and Neo clones that lean into tolling Souls-esque grindhouse. Interesting. Well, bold claims on this page. Let's see if the rest of the book plays it out. So the core mechanic in the game is a D20 plus modifiers against a DC. Both the GM and PC roll checks. Advantage works the same way. Disadvantage works the same way. I see a little burning wheelism here. Only a single roll is permitted until circumstances significantly change, which means, it must mean that for any activity, you only get the one roll, except in combat. Because swinging a sword at someone and failing, you basically can just swing it again. That's where this kind of thing falls apart. But I think that's good. That's good advice. You roll. If you meet or exceed the DC, you succeed. The default is 11, but it may range between 5 and 20. The GM can state if a task is impossible or doesn't require a check. Modifiers are based on your proficiency, it looks like, right? D20 plus your modifier, ability and proficiency modifiers, which represent your capability. Okay. Cool. So we got some cool PC art. I think maybe she's like a green elf. So that's kind of cool. Green elf with a hammer. Yeah, they got the halfling from before. The halfling does look like they're about to get smashed in the back by this elf. And then maybe a wizard, maybe a rogue of some kind. They're looking at some glowy rocks. Yep, seems like a dungeon type situation. Oh yeah, here we go. This picture of an elf. It's a green elf, and I like the bright red dwarf. That's fun. Yeah, it's totally a rogue. Okay, all right. So when you make your character, each PC belongs to a race and a class. The group of PCs is a party, which may have NPCs as retainers. You have your ability scores. Your score determines certain limits, and the modifier adjusts rolls. Hit points, equipment, spells, and special techniques further define you. As you gain XP, you level up. Okay, all right. PCs are most similar to 5e in level 1 to 3, and BX for 4 to 9. Max PC level is 9. Interesting that it's 9 and not 10. Okay, so how do we make a character? We pick our race, we roll abilities, we choose our class, define or pick equipment, decide on supply carried, determine total load, pick spells, fill out the sheet. Okay, so humans roll 3d6 in order, and you can swap 2 of them. Up to 2. Oh, swap up to 2, which means 2 sets of flips, right? So it's 3d6 in order, but you have a pretty good amount of moving stuff around. Okay. So you could be this scraggly looking gentleman. If you're a dwarf, you preset your con and strength at 13, and then 2d6 plus 3 for dex, int, wisdom, and charisma. If you want to be a dwarven thief, you have to have 13 or greater dexterity. And if you want to be a mage, you have to have 13 or greater intelligence, which means you need to roll 2 5s on these 2d6, and there's no swapping. Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is meant to be swap up to 2 pairs, because it would say swap a pair. I don't. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, it's pretty hard to be a dwarf, a thief or mage because you need to roll 2 10s or 2 5s to get a high enough dex. Interesting. Okay. All right. And then an elf dex. Okay. So they all work the same way. So an elf is dexterity and intelligence are 13, 2d6 plus 3, strength, con, wisdom, and charisma. You have to have a 13 or higher to be a warrior or a 13 or higher wisdom to be a zealot, which I assume is the cleric analogy. Okay. And then as a halfling, it's wisdom and charisma. And then they have to have the 10s in. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So make note of your abilities and class restrictions. You must have high enough ability score to take that class. Classes without restriction can be taken by any PC of that race. Okay, cool. I like our scrappy halfling. They're good. They're a good halfling. Okay, so these are the 4 races. You pick these. Yeah, humans have the potential to be much worse and also much better, and they also have flexibility. Yeah, it seems at a glance that I would want to pick human, but I almost always do. Let's look at what abilities they get, right? Because it can't just be like elves need to be able to see in the dark, and dwarves need to be able to tell whether you're walking on a up or down slope, right? That's my assumption, but let's see, right? We'll take a look. That might not be the case. So here's the new ability scores adjustment table. It does say stats are the only mechanical benefit to race. Well, I mean, we'll see. We'll keep looking, but that might be the same. So, all right, ability score shakes out this way. PCs die if they have an ability of 0 or lower. The 4 classes are warrior, thief, zealot, and mage. Your class determines your hardiness, skill set, equipment, and proficiencies. Humans have no class restriction, so we saw this before. Each PC picks a class at first level. You are proficient due to class features. Get your proficiency bonus on related checks. Each class has 3 archetypes. You pick 1 at 3, and then you gain benefits. Okay, so like in 5e, right? It's your subclass, and then the classes tell you what to roll. You always earn at least 1 HP each time you level up. PC gain. Here we go. So it's a gold for XP for gold, right? So PCs gain experience points for each gold piece of treasure captured. Simply discovering it or holding it for a while doesn't earn XP. Optionally, the GM can get XP for other things like bounties, rare discoveries, useful resources, esoteric knowledge, etc. Right. This is the old school model, obviously, of gaining experience, right? You go into the dungeon, you get the treasure, you come out, the bigger the treasure, the more XP you get, and back in you go. It doesn't matter what you fight, doesn't matter anything else you're doing, it's treasure or nothing. Okay, all right, sure. PCs level up when they earn enough XP. Everybody earns XP, looks like at the same time. And if you're looking at, I guess, the party, I'd like there to be more text here, like what you might suggest I give XP for other things. How much, like, is it the party and then we divide the XP? Is it like personal XP, right? Again, I think what I'm learning from the design is that we talked about this way back at the beginning, assuming familiarity with fantasy RPGs, that line kind of gives the design a lot of space to not answer those questions and leave it up to you. But I tend to prefer designs that answer that. Yeah, it's XP for gold, and then you can add some more stuff on top of it. And yeah, does the party split the treasure? Everybody earns XP at the same, or levels up at the same rate, which is really unusual. You don't normally see that in the games like Basic and stuff, right? The thief was one of the crappier classes in BX, but it leveled the fastest. The elf was like the best class, but it took forever to level up, right? You'd level up twice every time as a thief, every time an elf leveled up. Also, that was how that used to work. But anyway. Okay, so it's 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, 20, 30, 50, 75, and 100,000 when you level. And as you level up, you gain more benefits. Okay, so it does look like it's just ability scores for the different like species you can be. Okay. All right. I mean, yeah, so in chat, Into the Wannabe says, I feel like an XP system that only rewards XP for loot almost forces you to be the bad guy. There's a reason that the Keep on the Borderlands lists all the treasure for the people that run the keep. Okay, so our options are, I see how this works. Okay, so if you are a warrior, you will become a barbarian archetype, a fighter archetype, or a ranger archetype at level 3, and then you'll get, and they're not ordered. They're in, that's cute. That's kind of like more like an Apocalypse World style, like you select or highlight the ones that you want to get. Okay, so it combines level ups and feats into a specific path. Okay, so a warrior gets warrior equipment. They're proficient in coordination, tactics, will, and then archetype. And they gain their archetype at level 3. They have, at level 1, their starting hit points in the warrior equipment. They get counterattack in melee as a quick action up to twice a fight. Interesting. Okay, so you get that. I guess a counterattack is what you get attacked, and then as a quick action, you take a shot at whoever just hit you. I guess we'll see. And then, at level 3, you decide, are you a barbarian with intimidation, endurance, and travel-related abilities? Are you a fighter with medicine, engineering, and diplomacy? Or are you a ranger with wilderness, creatures, and perception checks? Interesting. Man, I wish I could be immune to weather. It's pretty bad. I'd love that. You're not cold, you're not hot. Ignore difficult terrain. These seem to be pretty broad abilities, right? Let's see if they're detailed further elsewhere. Okay, so warrior branches into barbarian, fighter, and ranger. Thief branches into assassin, bard, and rogue. Okay, all right. And then zealot is, cleric, druid, and paladin. This makes sense. Okay, cleric, druid, and paladin. And then mage breaks up into sorcerer, warlock, and wizard. So that's an interesting way of sort of clustering them into four blocks. I assume the immunity to weather thing is because there is a lot of like traveling, right? There's a lot of travel between dungeon and town locations. They mentioned it, the designers mentioned it early on, travel and resources, right? A significant portion of the game and its rules focus on traveling through predatory wilderness. So as a ranger, I assume you could avoid the bad effects of weather during the like mouse guard phase. Yeah. Okay. So let's see how the game is like structured beyond the class stuff, because these are abilities that either let you, by the time you've fully leveled up, you will have gotten everything. Say I'm a mage, I would have gained everything on this list, and I would have chosen 2 archetypes from my archetype. So if I was a sorcerer, I might at the end at level 9, I might have +4 permanent HP and half damage from fire. Those might be the 2 that I chose. As a warlock, I could choose dark sight and wear light armor, right? So those are some options. Yeah, it's interesting. It definitely is constrained in a way that modern D&D isn't, but it's not that much more constrained necessarily. It's broken up into archetypes within classes, and then those archetypes. I imagine it would not be hard to rope in a multi-class thing to be able to say like, take an advancement from another archetype or take an advancement from another class, because the advancements aren't just like can cast spells. These are adjustments to your existing abilities. So you could grant bless as an ability to the warlock, right? It could be like Hell's Blessing or whatever. So not too hard, I imagine, to drift this into a multi-class thing, but multi-classing was not a function of basic D&D. We would get multi-classing in AD&D, definitely in AD&D second edition, that idea of being a fucking fighter, mage, thief. But a lot of these things that we think of as singular classes used to not be that way. Sit down, kids. Grandpa Adam's going to explain something to you. So it used to be if you wanted to be a ranger, first you'd have to level up a bunch as a fighter, then level up a bunch as a thief, then you would qualify to become a ranger. Being a bard and a paladin Both of those classes were really hard because they either required leveling up like 7 times. To be a bard, you had to be a fighter, a mage, and a thief, all up to a certain level. Then you had to like go on a special quest to become a bard. It's a whole thing. And paladins, you had to have like, I think a 17 in your, it was either a 17 or an 18 in charisma. Druid was the same way, right? You had to like level up a bunch to be allowed to be a part of it. Yeah, exactly. They had prerequisites. They were a lot more like if you're a 3.575 Pathfinder 1 like fan, they were a lot more like prestige classes in those games. That idea of I'm going to become a bard, but to do that, I have to first learn the ways of fighting and spellcasting and sneaking. I have to like dip into all these other classes. A little bit like a Final Fantasy style adjustment. Yeah. And so if you had a paladin on your team, paladins were, they were overpowered because you need to roll 3 6s on your charisma to become one. It was very, and as a result, if you managed to roll that and somebody in your group got to be a paladin, then they were just better than other classes. They were just cool and tough. And you're like, well, this is my reward for becoming this class. So it doesn't look like at a glance there's multi-classing, but I could see if you wanted to drift that into this version. They're right though about this seeming much simpler to play, it's weird because it's a stripped down simple version of the game, but I think probably it's allowed to be that because it expects you to know and contextualize a lot of stuff from 5e, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not totally certain yet whether this is just a toolkit or like it would work as a standalone or like what the deal is, but I like some of the little bits and pieces. I see what they're doing for sure. Yeah, put your armor on, elf. So let's see how that stuff works. So heavy armor, light armor, shield, or no armor. Those are the kinds of armor. You get AC 15 if you wear heavy armor, but you're disadvantaged to stealth and stamina, weighs 5 load, and you have to be a warrior or a zealot to wear it. Light armor, warrior, zealot, or thief. Anyone can use a shield. And then that's that. Okay, so +2 AC, 12 plus dex, 15. Weapons are broken into categories. So melee weapons and ranged weapons, simple weapons, martial weapons, makes sense. Here's another piece of old D&D history for you. In basic Dungeons and Dragons, weapons having a different damage value was an optional rule. By default, in basic Dungeons and Dragons, all weapons of any kind deal 1d6 damage. And if you use the optional rule, two-handed swords and battle axes, I think, did 1d10. Longswords did 1d8. Longswords were the best weapon, period. End of statement. If you use the optional damage rules, but otherwise everything's just a flat d6. Yeah. So our weapons in this are simple and martial, and then melee and ranged to break them up. And then they have tags. So in this case, arming sword, D10 plus strength, crossbow, D12. Interesting. So here's a question, and I don't know if the table is going to answer this for us. Here we go. Ranged weapons add dex to damage. Strength, melee to strength, you can alter it. 1d12 plus PC's dex or... Okay, so it's an or. I wasn't sure if it was like the average of the two, but that's cool. That's a nice way to kind of like broaden that out to just be like, well, it's the crossbow. You can deal your wisdom modifier and damage or your dexterity modifier. Jesus Christ, crossbows are awesome in this. Same with warbows. D12s. Longsword is also a D12. Interesting. This is a very different array of damage than you normally see. Notice they did say damage is higher. That's right. So none of the weapons deal 1d4 damage. They all deal a lot more damage. And it's interesting that the longsword is up there with the highest stuff, and the crossbow deals a d12. Yeah. So it has action to reload. I'm guessing piercing is the type of, like slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning. Yeah, the type of damage. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, cool. And yeah, nothing is a D4. Javelins, hatchets, clubs, maces, shield bashing. Those are all D6, but yeah. Yeah, halberd, strength or int. So I guess this is a part of how you can make stuff less of a dump stat by making it like putting that on the damage table. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think not to get too deeply into it, but quarterstaves are pretty much like the unsung hero of martial combat in the medieval era, right? Swords are great. Maces are great. Bows and stuff are also great, but I think we underestimate the power of a strong stick. They were actually pretty useful. Yeah. Yep. Same with spears. I think both of those things we've got the cult of the sword, and we're very attached to that idea. There's a reason that Excalibur wasn't a quarterstaff. Yeah, right. Try parrying a quarterstaff with a sword. Yeah. So anyhow, items and weight are tracked in terms of load. Each item the size of a human head or 5 pounds is considered one load. PCs are able to carry load equal to their strength score without issue. Heavy armor is 5, light armor is 2. Here we go. This is why encumbrance matters. So in 5e, encumbrance is basically just the GM's way to say someone else has to carry this if you are too loaded up. In OSR play, the main thing about encumbrance was it slowed you down. So you were slower in combat, you were slower in exploration, and that mattered because in exploration, you could explore less between random encounter rolls, right? Dungeons would say every, 3 turns, roll a d6. On a 1, there's a random encounter. So if you are less encumbered, you can explore more than you would be able to if you were full of gear. Yeah, and the idea is that it slows you down. So you would have part of being a mage in OSR play is, yes, casting spells, but also carrying shit, writing things, having your hands free, and standing with people with armor all around you because they are loaded up and slow and impossible to kill, and you are hiding behind them. Armor class was more likely to protect you than hit points in that kind of play. You can equip and use magic items equal in number to your charisma modifier, minimum 1. Consumables don't count. Takes an hour to attune to an item. That's interesting. So attunement is based on your charisma mod. Again, like giving more responsibility to some of these other abilities. Oh, interesting. So they do the like encumbrance thing where you're tracking exactly what you're carrying around, but also there is supply up to your intelligence score. How much resupply you brought, and represents your ability to plan ahead. You lose supply every time you replenish an expendable item. You gain supply by succeeding at a forage check to cannibalize an item. You can buy supply. Oh, that's cool. So supply is, it's like adventuring gear or resources. Yeah, your intelligence modifier shows how much stuff you remembered to bring with you into the dungeon. So it's like, it's both granular and non-granular. So I guess you spend supply to refill items that you're missing. And yeah, 5 supply is 1 load. So it's like abstracted. It's still you still have to carry it, but you don't know what it is until you take it out. And so you can use supply to replenish 1 fight worth of arrows. Oh, that's interesting. So if you're like, shit, I don't have any arrows. This is the best part of the design so far. I don't have any. Oh God, I ran out of arrows. I'm going to spend 1 supply and it lets me fight with my bow for this whole battle. And then I run out at the end of the fight. You can spend a supply for an hour of torches, a day of rations, 3 hours of lantern oil. This is really interesting. This bit is quite cool. It's like semi-abstracted, which I haven't seen before. Yeah. And then a use of a potion, a use of a strong potion, holy water, a bomb, and those are quite expensive, right? So you have supply up to your int score, but I guess you could buy up more supply before you go in. Is there a cap? I guess the cap is how much load you're carrying. So if you wanted to use a Dragon's Breath bomb and you had +3 up here in score. Oh, I see. So if you're a wizard and you manage to luck out and get 18 intelligence, your mage and 18 intelligence, then you would have 18 supply, which means you're already going to the dungeon carrying nearest 5. So you're carrying 15. So you'd be carrying 3 load. Okay, all right. So it's not bad. You're carrying around that amount of load, and then you could spend it twice for 2 Dragon's Breath bombs. Or that's fun. So that makes a mage like the quartermaster on top of being the like spellcaster. I'm curious to see how many spells mages get, but this turns them into that because they're the smartest, so they're the most prepared, so they're the ones that have the most stuff with them that you might need. Oh, that's really cute. That's a nice little design loop there, making smart characters having thought ahead to bring gear. And then if you're in a fertile region, you can forage without making a check. Check produces more forage worth 1 supply per rolled result over DC 11. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's neat. That's a neat little bit. Yeah, they planned ahead and happen to have the right thing because they're smart. Okay, all right. So let's see, durability and sundering. This is your stuff gets damaged. Equipment, gear, weapons, armor have durability between 1 and 5. The higher, the sturdier. Glass and cloth are 1, up to mythical items with 3 or greater. When an item is used as part of a check, it might take sundering damage. A critical fail or suffering from an enemy's critical success reduce the item's durability by 1. Once it's 0, it breaks. Interesting. So if the goblin that you are fighting critically hits you in the chest or whatever, then your armor suffers a point of sundering damage. And if it's boiled leather, it's only got 1 more. If you critically fumble an attack, your weapon will like take a point of sundering damage. Interesting. Okay. Shields can trade HP damage for sundering damage, preventing HP at the cost of the item's durability. Oh, neat. So if you're carrying around a shield, a wooden embossed shield, if you're carrying around a shield, you kind of have 2 extra hit points, but as long as it has 1 hit point, it's absorbing, it's boosting your AC, but it's also ablative in the sense that if I say an ogre hits you with a club, you take 8 damage, and you're like, shit, I only have 7 hit points, you can say, cool, he hits you in the arm, shatters your shield, deals you a bunch of damage, you have 1 hit point left, and now you have no shield. Interesting. That's very cool. I like that. The question becomes then, how do we fix that stuff? So repairing equipment is possible during rest or when in a stronghold. Items with less than max durability but greater than 0 can be repaired. Right, so you're gambling on it. You're saying like, I'm going to take 1 hit point to my shield and then hopefully I don't take another crit because the GM might say your shield breaks. Right, yeah, okay. Repairing a sundered item is an int check with DC 10 plus the durability attempted to be repaired. Having the right kit grants you advantage. Each durability repaired grants 1 supply, requires a supply. There you go. Because I was going to say, like, what do you, like, are you carrying around, like, nails and wood to fix your shield? But that's what supply is for. Right, that's good abstracting. That's cool. Okay. And then crafting items, you need a forge or suitable workstation. You need prep. You need to assemble it and to hone it. Each check is a base DC 11. Each step takes a half day of work. Interesting. Okay, so you can go home and you can, if you blow up your shield, you blow up your armor, you don't have enough money, or you needed to buy a resurrection spell for somebody or whatever, you could make your own shield if you're able to succeed at 3 DC 11 checks. Yeah, right. Gives you some downtime stuff. I like it. Okay, all right. So I'm guessing this is the combat chapter, given the cool wizard, and then this guy getting stabbed in the eye. Okay, gameplay, combat. Yep, same. Okay. So saving throws and checks. A saving throw is the same as in D&D. Skills have been removed from 5e and are proficient checks. They're granted from a PC's class and archetype. Okay. So instead of skills, you have, I don't know, say I'm an assassin. I have intimidation, insight, and tracking related checks. In addition to stealth, deception, senses, tools. Okay, got it. All right, that makes sense. Okay, so it's still skills, but it's more like circumstances. So like they're broader in the sense that if it's anything to do with what was like nature checks, yeah, look like chaos magic related checks. So anything to do with chaos magic, either recognizing it, making new spells, whatever. Okay. Let's take a look at the gameplay. So saves and checks, skills and proficiencies. PCs take turns describing their actions. Many actions require a check. So your actions, you can take one of each action per round, but might be forced to make checks that don't count as actions. Okay, so you can do something active, you can move, and then you can do a quick action. So this is very super standard action economy. Active actions are driven by PC's choices. They can always be traded down to a movement or a quick action. So like attacking, hiding, whatever, the things you do in combat. And then you can move. If you need to swim or crawl, you move at half speed. Load above your strength slows your speed down. Okay, so this stuff all seems pretty normal, pretty like understood. This is standard like kind of 5e stuff. So let's push on and see if we can find some differences. So we deal normally, damage normally. The blocks for the NPCs in this are actually quite cool. They're little. You can fit like 6 of them on a page. So we'll take a look at that. But damage is doubled on a crit. Rolling a 1 that damages a PC doubles the damage that they suffer. Rolling a natural 1 on a check that damages a PC. Oh, I see. So interesting. So if you critically fumble a saving throw, you take double damage. Okay, interesting. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, and then your dex score is your initiative rather than so you don't have to roll for it. Yeah. Okay, if you reach 0 hit points, you're incapacitated. You die if you're not stabilized within a minute. Someone can roll a check to stabilize you. Once you're stabilized, you roll on the injury table. Okay, so dying means things, or dying, right? Falling down and hitting 0, you lose stat points, basically, or a body part. Or disadvantage until end, or you get a 20 and you instantly heal. So it's somewhere between a critical wounds type system and the roll a natural 20 and jump back up and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Also, yeah, because any stat hitting 0 will kill you, you could stabilize, but the injury would kill you, right? If you have 3 strength and you roll a 4 on feeble on the injury table, you may just stay dead. And that's right, you can't stabilize yourself. Yeah, that's a good point. Cool. You heal 1 HP per level per night of safe rest. This excludes healing in a dungeon. A PC heals 1 HP per night of unsafe rest. Oh, wow. Okay. 1 HP per day of rest if you do it in the dungeon. So you can't really rest to heal up. You need magic spells, and potions and stuff. Okay. So very, very severe on the healing stuff. Yeah. Okay. Morale is a D20 with your wisdom modifier, proficiency bonus if fitting, and monster morale bonus based on hit dice. You check enemy morale at the beginning of a fight, after first blood, when a leader or expert is killed, or when the tide of the battle is obvious. If they fail, they surrender or flee. Makes sense? Totally makes sense. This is like straight from basic. And then we talk about gold. An enemy's carried loot is 1d20 GP per hit dice, separate from any horde. So this is kind of a way to like assign an XP value to a monster, right? And then, went on ahead here. And then we do travel. So this is where we do the like exploring the dungeon part, and this is where it gets real kind of deep into the OSR stuff, because 5e has morale, it has combat, it has turns and rounds and all of that stuff. but travel turns and exploration is the thing that we sort of like miss. And this was the hex crawling stuff that I really liked in Tomb. This is what I liked about Tomb, right? So travel turn is every hour of in-fiction time. Travel turns are used to track torches, distance, and encounters. As a rule of thumb, the GM counts every 3 or 4 scenes, rooms, or encounters in a dungeon as 1 hour. The GM rolls a d20 for each turn and can roll with advantage if the PCs are being cautious, or disadvantage if not. The GM is encouraged to be creative and logical, tying in threats that pertain to the area. Oh, so it's like a severity roll rather than a specific roll. Travel turntable. Okay, so terrible immediate threat, something bad soon, threat worsens, or nothing bad, maybe even good. Oh, that's cute. I guess you could create your own for each individual adventure, but it's nice that this is the framework for it, right? That probably something bad happens or a threat worsens or draws near. It's like a random table, but for Apocalypse World GM moves. Like how hard a move do you want to make, right? Like a soft move or like harder and harder moves as you get to the 1. 1 is the like environment, like this is rocks fall, save or die. And then this is you encounter some halfling merchants. Yes, even down here on level 3. Cool. All right. So PCs travel based on their strength mod per day. Encumbered is half your speed. We've got some additional rules for different types of travel. This is a role that I think is really good. This is the fast travel role, right? For us in Dungeon World, this was a perilous journey, right? So if there's insufficient time to play your return to a safe camp, you can just roll, right? So you make a check, and if you succeed, you return to safety without issue. Failure has a cost. Maybe you took some damage. Maybe it was arduous, but it's like, this is how you can fast travel at a risk. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. And then the GM keeps track of time, and it gives you a way to do this with dice, right? Showing that's actually really cute. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time looking at it, but I love these kinds of tools. Each time die is 1d6. Its face turned to represent the hour. It's useful for counting durations, infections, and travel turns. As the day moves forward, the GM uses up to 4d6 turn to represent the hour of the day, right? 6-1 is 7. 6-6-6-2 is 20. Each time die represents a quarter of the day and 6 hours of time. That's kind of cool, actually. Like I like that idea of using the dice as like, what time is it? Add up all the time dice that I have in front of me, and I can see, and you just physically turn the dice like the hands of a clock moving. That's pretty cute. I like it. Yeah. And then it helps you find out when things are going to happen, even within pieces of the day. You can break the day down. Yeah, I like that. That's neat. So obviously light is another thing that's really important. Keeping track of how far your light goes, how long it lasts, and then tracking it with those time dice. And it gives us rules for the different kinds of them. Now, this is interesting. It's interesting that there is dark sight in the game, which nefarious, ancient, and subterranean creatures have. We have dark sight, but none of the character types have it. It's weird to me. Like I would almost, if I were, and I'm going to go back, but if I were to change anything about this myself, I were to hack this, I'd probably just take this part of this page out and just be like, everyone uses the human rules, and you can describe your race as being whatever you want, right? Instead of saying like, because this is the only part that it affects is like what class you can be or not. It's an interesting choice when compared to both 5e and basic, because it's, I don't know. Yeah, it feels like the race in this feels pretty perfunctory because it's mechanically, the footprint is so small. But also, like, I'm used to OSR games where elf is a class, so that might just be my own personal like view on what sort of the OSR is. So it looks like we're into the section where we start getting like specific rules about stuff. So chase rules, retreating from combat, because obviously this is a thing that comes up a lot. As soon as you create rules for enemies running away, You have to have rules for the PCs chasing them down and stabbing them in the back. Each PC has resilience equal to their constitution score. Resilience is like how long you can go before you become exhausted. It doesn't look like there's a resilience check after a fight, but you could obviously throw one of those in there. If you fail, you become exhausted. Exhaustion means exhausted is very serious. You suffer disadvantage and you can't move. You pretty much just shut down. Okay, all right. And then corruption, disease, poison, venom, demonic possession, etc. Fall under corruptions, and they are infections in stages. Yeah. Okay, cool. Here we go. Zealots and mages gain spellcasting. Did you know in basic D&D, if you're a cleric, you didn't get spells until you were level 2? You know that? You got turn undead at level 1, but you don't get any spells. There's no cure. Like if you're a cleric, you don't have cure wounds until you're at least level 2, and that takes time. Well, it takes treasure to get there, but yeah. Okay, so spells are denoted by level as being more or less powerful. This is the table upon which you figure out how many spells that you know. Failures on your spell casting check can require a magical mishap. Everybody's a bit of a chaos magician. So you know a number of spells based on your level and the spell's level. Known spells can be cast. Columns relate to the spell level while rows are class level. A level 4 caster would know 4 first level spells and 2 second level. Okay, so at level 1 you get 1 first level spell. Spellcasting PCs know 3 cantrips, which are separate. Cast any known spell as a rite. Takes an hour to cast. And then we have concentration. Okay. PCs can't improvise, but might be able to cast from scrolls. And then here's our... So how do we... Okay. This is what I'm curious about is like how often do you prepare your... Yeah. There's no need for the PCs to determine what spells they plan to cast each day, but you can hold an action to cast a spell in an ambush. Some spells require components. So I guess we know and can cast 1 per day. And then we know and can cast 2 per day. Like, do we... Yeah, because then we end up at like level 5, 5 first level spells. You can cast each one once or 1 5 times, that kind of thing. And then you have 2 or 3 second level and 1 third level. And when it's 1, it's just that's the one spell you know and can cast, I guess. So the cantrips are Illuminate, Subtle Force, Whisper Mind, Flicker Heat, and Ledger Domain. Okay, so all kinds of like fictionally useful stuff. And then first level are Charm, Sleep, Arcane Arrow, Discern Magic, and Abjure. Okay, yeah, all right. So yeah, fictional cantrips, which totally makes sense for this kind of thing, because ultimately in a fiction first kind of system, or a game that is deriving its results from what's in the fiction before really and like wants to take away from roles, you end up being able to do more stuff with things like Flicker Heat or Ledger Domain that you normally like. It wouldn't be that useful, but in this it's very useful because you can use it to like detect traps if you're smart, right? Yeah, very cool. And then all the way up to 5th level where you get things like Infernal Call, Deadly Mist, Wayfarer, right? The big spells. Okay, cool. So it's a very simplified version. And I like that it looks like, we don't even, this is it. This is the description of the spells. It's the whole thing. Cool. Well, let's look at monsters and NPCs. So another OSR element the game brings in obviously is retainers, right? Retainers bossing people around based on your charisma modifier. And then you get certain types of retainer and then you shove them around. You tell them what to do. And I like that they have, like, you can spend an active action to make a command check. It's not just loose. It allows you to specifically choose what you want them to do. And then you roll to command them. So that's kind of cool. And then you gather renown, which I guess helps. Yeah, it just helps with people knowing you. GM rolls a d20. The NPC knows the PC if it's equal to or under their renown, and then you can choose that too. Yeah, okay. All right. That's kind of cool. And then here's the I looked at this and my mind just went blank. This is how monsters work. There's the math. That's right. It's the monster math. The monster math. It was a graveyard smath. Good stuff. Nice work. I'm not going to bother with this page because it's math and it won't make any sense to me, but this is how you figure monsters out. Okay, so a monster belongs to a category: brute, leader, predator, shaper, sniper, soldier. Oh, and those give you weaknesses and strengths. Okay, so you might have a zombie that's a brute led by a vampire leader, and then there'd be a particularly scary kind of zombie that's a predator, right? Okay, neat. I like that. Okay, and then monsters have 0 to 1 techniques. Normal monsters have 1 or 2. Elite monsters have 3 or more. And these are special abilities: a blast, a burst. Yeah, there's some modular monster 4th edition D&D shit that's very cool in here. So you're like, all right, I quickly need to throw together a spellcasting vampire. Okay, so he's a strong monster. He's going to be a leader. I'm going to give him adept. I'm going to give him blast. And I'm going to give him force condition. There you go. Now I have this kind of hacked together monster. And then tactics, right, shows how the monsters might fight as a group. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. And then rules, thankfully, for converting monsters. And then we talk a tiny bit about alignment. Non-evil alignments are irrelevant. PC alignments are likewise irrelevant, but evil is a thing because there's some spells. Yeah, okay. And then how we make monsters. And then our little monster manual. But see what I mean? This is the whole monster right here. It's the whole monster and what it does. Yeah. So that's cool. Yes. A small book with GM advice. Thank God. Oh, man. So the GM's job in this game is to provide a framework for play, prepare the base of a session's content. That's a great way of phrasing that. Oh, that's really good. Just prepare the base of a session's content. I like the way that's, you set it up, you put it before the PCs and you say, okay, now let's work on this together. Let's build something. Cool. This is neat. You don't normally expect this kind of stuff in an OSR game. A lot of the time the OSR just says to you I don't know, you're the GM, you fucking do it. You figure it out. Lay the base and then embrace the chaos. So run the game and adhere to principles, make rulings on actions and outcomes. The GM plans a series of sessions which make up an adventure. Multiple adventures constitute a campaign. The centerpiece of any game is a charged situation with opposing forces and conflicting goals. This is all great GM advice for any game. So these are the things you need to understand in your session. This is quite good. So the incitement, what gets things going, the fork, time sensitive choice that compels them down to go one road or another, obstacles in their way, threats that oppose them, and then climax and resolution. So think about these things, and then it gives us a little bit of information about a preset version of that. So I like that. I like when in GM chapters they say, here's the tools, then here's an example of someone building something with the tool. Yeah. So our principles as a GM, when making rulings, provide a fair challenge. Right? The GM must be brutally fair, even to a fault. It is not their job to protect or challenge the PCs in some kind of plot line. Instead, the GM presents a challenging world full of threat and consistency and lets the PCs die if they don't treat it with the respect it deserves. Sounds good to me for this kind of play? Absolutely. Impact and ingenuity, right? Reward them with impact when they do something smart. Make sure their choices are meaningful. Be consistent internally, right? Fundamental truths of the world should mean something. Discovery, right? That's what the game is about. And the GM is often the host, rules keeper, and the one who provides the means to play. So taking care of the group in this game, facilitating good plays on the GM's job. This is a great page. This is a really nice one-pager for game masters. I mean, how does one define fair in this game, it means applying the rules the same to everybody. This game specifically like calls out, don't like you couldn't. I don't think you could. I mean, I guess theoretically, if you wanted to be without a count, right? If you don't want to be held accountable, you could roll behind your screen. But a fair challenge means, I rolled a 20. We all saw it. That's what happens. I'm sorry, your character is dead, right? Yeah, don't try to keep the players alive. Don't fudge your rolls. Don't cheat on either side. Don't be like, oh, my vampire wizard that I thought was going to be really hard, they killed him in 2 hits. I'm going to give him 10 more hit points. Just let it happen. Just be like, you did it. Weird. Sometimes that leads to an anticlimax, but that's how OSR play works. It's not cinematic play. Yes, random tables. Fuck yeah. Roll 1d12 on each column in order. Thing, action, thing, fallout. So like mage, weaken, war. No, here we go. Thing, action, thing. So mage, weaken, kingdom, war. There you go. Boom. Now you have a storyline, right? 4 words. This is very clever. Mage, weaken, kingdom, war. So there's like an evil vizier that is undermining the kingdom's power, and it's going to lead to a war. There you go. I like these. They're not tables of specific stuff. They're like thematic descriptor tables. You find a sword. It is mercurial. Cult protect artifact desecration. Yeah. Stranger discover desecration. Stranger discover monster desecration. Yeah, they're prompts. That's cool. I like that. This is a good table too. I'm gonna steal this. This connections table is hot shit. Artifact, corrupt, monarch, summoning. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's good. This is nice. This is a nice little thing. I like it. Random maps. You can generate a dungeon, city block, or wilderness map by using a common puzzle cube. Wait, hold on. What? Is this a Rubik's Cube random map generator? What? Get the fuck out of here. Oh, that's cool. If you don't have a 6-sided puzzle cube, you can roll 9d6. I have never seen a role-playing game that uses a Rubik's Cube before. So I guess the idea is you just roll it around a bunch of times, twist some things, bop it, or whatever, and then when you're done, you look at a face and then turn it into a map. So white is an open path, entrance or clearing, right? So you come into the dungeon here, and you leave the dungeon over there. Boop, boop. And then on either side over here, we've got a in the northeast. This yellow one is a passive threat, a hazard or terrain. These 2 green ones are key destinations with treasure. This blue one is an alternative path. Oh, that's cool. So it's like another way through. There's our exit. And then the 2 reds are blocked or locked, can't travel by normal means, right? Separated areas. And then over here in orange, we have danger or enemy convergences. That's really neat. Yeah. Spin the Rubik's Cube around. And then if you do it, you have a dungeon on every face. You could have layered micro dungeons, or you could attach where white. Oh my God, that's so if you had a face, because the corner pieces, this piece would be white on this side and on this side. So you could very easily lead in here, through here. When you get to this one, you could have an out that way and an out that way, and all you have to do is turn the cube one side. Or do they have different? Are they have different colors on other sides? Anyway, you'd be looking for connections between colors, right? So you could turn it. Are they different? I assume that they're like the same on. Anyway, whatever. But the idea is you'd be able to look for other entrances and exits by matching color as you turn the side. So it would allow you to like create some kind of Oh man. So Rising Cosmos points out in chat, you could very easily make this a shifting dungeon where it's like when they hit this switch, we turn by 90 degrees one side. Shunk, shunk, right? So the dungeon has moving rooms that shift around. That's brilliant. That's very cool. Yeah, it's like Hypercube, right? Neat. That's cool. This is very cool too. Awesome. All right. And then we have basically our GM screen, which is quick reference for all of the various rules. For folks who are asking, the character sheet. So this is the character sheet. Very simple. Looks like a basic D&D character sheet. Nice and compact. A little gridded area. I mean, obviously you'd want to have a graph paper to draw, but that's pretty, yeah. And that's that. That's it. That's cool. I gotta say, like, these last 2 pages, the generate as a game master, the generator and the random maps thing are like, they're my favorite bit for sure. Like I'm gonna use this connections table. You could do it to create a bunch of fronts and then choose what your characters decide to engage with. You could do world building just from here, right? Like it's a city, and the city is, let's roll. It is fledgling. Oh, okay. So it's not a city. Maybe it's brand new. And it's a camp, and you can start building things. And what's going on in the camp? Well, thing, action, thing, fallout, right? It's like a front generator, which is really interesting. Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. I like it. I haven't seen anything like, and I don't know, I'm kind of jaded. So often I'll see stuff and be like, oh, that's a cool variation of something I've already seen. I haven't seen this connections table thing anywhere before. I think the Iron Crown RPG might have something like that. And I've definitely never seen Rubik's Cube dungeon generator. That's pretty badass. So maybe, I don't know, maybe next time I need to put together a dungeon, city block, or wilderness map for like Court of Swords or something, we'll try this out. Maybe I know there's like online Rubik's Cubes that you can mess with. So yeah, I think we'll try this out next time I need to make something like this. Yeah, very cool. And in that way, I think it succeeds as being like this to me. And we talked about this at the beginning, this product, right? 5 Torches Deep to me seems more valuable as a toolbox of options for 5th edition, for me at least, rather than like a brand new game. There are, and let me take a look. There are, I think, some supplements that are planned for the game. Yeah, here we go. So early to mid 2020, the game is going to get a supplement focusing on 1v1 dueling between characters, one with a duel of wits or social combat system, and one that greatly expands magic rules, as well as a campaign setting guide. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That's cool. So there's a whole bunch of little supplements being added. And what I hope is that they both build on the existing framework, but that we get more modular tools to break out and put into other games. That's what I want. I want stuff like that. Yeah. I want to see things that I want a Duel of Wits system that I can pull out of this and place into 5e because they're cool and I like them. I'm impressed by this. I kind of, usually when someone shows me something and they're like, it's based on 5th edition D&D, I'm like, okay, well, maybe it'll be cool, but every once in a while, something comes along that isn't just like, here's a new class and here's some new monsters. It's like, here's a new way of looking at things. And I think that to that extent, I think that 5 Torches Deep did a pretty good job pulling in some stuff that feels pretty OSR. So that's cool. If you want to find out more about this, or you want to grab the PDF yourself, or follow the page where all of this stuff comes up, most of it is available in the game is available in PDF and in print form on DriveThruRPG. There is a command in chat. If you just go !5 torches, you can check it out that way. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put the link in the description. But yeah, this has been a first look at a 5 Torches Deep, an OSR/5e thing, and it's pretty damn cool. I gotta go dig around in my closet and see if I still have my Rubik's Cube somewhere. That's it for our first look, but thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you to the folks at 5 Torches Deep for sponsoring this first look. And thanks for coming and watching. We will see you next time for another first look. Bye, everybody.